Hi, I'm Yulia, and this is the News Brief special. Although it's not so special anymore because I guess every week, twice a week, we do a special. This time we're going to be talking about crazy tweets about Ukraine, featuring our favorite US politicians, US social media personalities, and of course, our favorite billionaire on Twitter, now known as X. Some of these tweets are very recent, pertaining to USAID, and some of them have made a mark. And of course, as per usual, we're going to be discussing it together in the comments, so you don't have to suffer alone, and I don't have to suffer alone. And leave your questions, suggestions, and constructive criticism, as well as your opinions, down below, because I read all of them and I really appreciate them. Let's go. Boy, as we know, with the new Trump administration, a lot of things in the US are changing. And depending on who you ask in the country, some people are happy about it and some people are, well, very unhappy about it. One of the most recent crusades that Elon Musk embarked on is the crusade against USAID, and, he dismantled it. With that, there was also a lot of propaganda about USAID and what it financed, and of course, Ukraine made it to the headlines. You would think, how? Well, this is how. A false video claiming that celebrities were paid by USAID for visiting Ukraine went viral online and was reposted by Elon Musk, ex-owner and most followed user. The footage, which I'm going to show you here.
USAID sponsored American celebrity visits to Ukraine after Russia's full-scale invasion began. Angelina Jolie, $20 million. Sean Penn, $5 million. Jean-Claude Van Damme, $1.5 million. Orlando Bloom, $8 million. Ben Stiller, $4 million. This was done to increase Zelensky's popularity among foreign audiences, particularly in the United States. The involvement of celebrities made it easier to coordinate funding programs for Ukraine during the conflict.
As well as, of course, describe it for you. The footage showed photographs or clips of a number of well-known actors meeting with Ukraine's leader Volodymyr Zelensky, while a narrator with a British accent claimed the actors had received large payments from USAID for their appearance. That includes Angelina Jolie, who famously went viral by going to Lviv croissants, and there was a kid who literally didn't even realize that it was her. She funded that from her own money. I mean, she goes to a lot of different crisis zones and helps with humanitarian missions around the world. Yeah, USAID did not pay her to boost Zelensky's popularity. Among those people who were allegedly paid to go to Ukraine was also Orlando Bloom, who was allegedly paid $8 million, Sean Penn at $5 million. Also, Angelina Jolie was a whopping $20 million, according to these people. And this was done to increase Zelensky's popularity among foreign audiences, particularly in the United States. The involvement of celebrities made it easy to coordinate funding programs for Ukraine during the conflict. Well, no, actually, celebrities are not paid to go to Ukraine. United 24, which is one of Ukraine's largest donation platforms that was created to bring awareness to the country and the cause, actually partners up with celebrities who would like to help for free out of their own free will. They become ambassadors and they help raise money for various different causes that the United 24 platform posts. So yeah, no, I mean, the celebrities didn't have to go to Ukraine and be paid to go to Ukraine. Like, there are plenty of different conflicts and wars and humanitarian crises that many of these celebrities attended. And for some reason, no one's saying that they were paid to do that, but they're paid to go to Ukraine? Okay, Ukraine is so special. According to the New York Times, there is no evidence of the payment in any of the agency's programs. A spokesperson for E! News also said in a statement that the video is not authentic and did not originate from E! News as it was posted to be seen as. I think it's Russian propaganda. The actor Ben Stiller, said to have been paid $4 million for a visit to Ukraine, took to social media to try to refute the claim.
These are lies coming from Russian media. I completely self-funded my humanitarian trip to Ukraine. There was no funding from USAID and certainly no payment of any kind. 100% false.
But this also isn't just the only thing that Musk and his cronies have been blaming Ukraine for. There are a lot of people that supported this tweet, and one of them includes a food service worker, an Army National Guard veteran, who was blamed for starting a conspiracy theory in 2022 about American biological weapons laboratories in Ukraine. And of course, he's attacking the USAID and kind of like chiming in to the choir with Musk and saying that, it's an Orwellian dystopia that USAID is creating, and that the agency supports media around the world, and that's why we live on the foundation of lies. That's also why Musk wants to shut down Radio Free Liberty and Voice of America, because they were partially funded by USAID. And it's done under the guise of, we need free speech that isn't sponsored by these American agencies. But in reality, it's actually done to suppress free speech, because a lot of the agencies that he wants to take down and the agencies that Trump launched investigations into are actually those that do not agree with Musk or Trump and are not afraid to call him out. Yes, USAID did sponsor a lot of independent media projects around the globe for a long time. And it's important to do so because independent media, in fact, has a very, very hard time functioning on its own. But these are grants. USAID does not it does not monitor the content that comes out of this media. For instance, one of the medias that is likely going to be struggling right now is Ukrainer.net, and that's a media in Ukraine that does publications both in Ukrainian and English and in several other languages, but they're not nearly as popular as these two, that shows you Ukrainian culture. They published a bunch of amazing books, Ukraine from Above, which is like aerial views of beautiful architecture, and also regional specifics about Ukraine, which is Ukrainian Insider, which is an amazing book. This is not propaganda. This is just something that this media platform does to kind of inform people about Ukraine and what's happening here. They also do a lot of fantastic Ukrainian-speaking interviews with my personal friend Yulia Tymoshenko, not former prime minister, just happens to have the same name, unfortunately. And they do it with a lot of like Ukrainian literary scholars and a lot of Ukrainian bright thinkers and inspirational figures. And they kind of just talk about life and war and politics and Ukrainian society and stuff. So none of this is propaganda. Musk is on a crusade against companies and agencies and things that are not afraid to stand up to him. And it's really, really upsetting to see so much crazy propaganda coming out of the dismantlement of USAID. Of course, I will agree that a lot of grants and a lot of things that they were giving out were kind of BS and they didn't ever need to happen. But a lot of these, I think the overwhelming majority of these grants were actually done for good. And now that the USAID is shut down and they're not going to be providing any grants to independent media, to different organizations around the world to support humanitarian work, China is going to step in and take over those grants and that funding. And you know what? That's not good, because think what you want about China after you joined Douyin for 3 days and decided that it's a blossoming democracy. It really is not. And having Chinese sphere of influence growing and growing, especially in the Middle East, is not good. Then my second favorite online personality that just loves talking about Ukraine is Candace Owens. If you don't know who Candace Owens is, that's a person who makes fun of disabled people.
Really? Are we really doing this? Is this what we needed? Take a look at this. Ready? So it is a Skims campaign, and it is a woman that is in a bra and underwear. Skims is the undergarment brand that is owned by Kim Kardashian. She's in a bra and underwear, and she's in a wheelchair. She's in a wheelchair, and it says Skims, made for everybody, available now. Really? That's all I'm going to say is really. I don't really understand how far we're going to take this inclusivity thing. I really don't get it. I don't know. And if I'm wrong, again, educate me. Today, I just want to be educated in the comments.
Generally participates in all of the QAnon-ish and not-ish conspiracy theories, and is a very, very far-right, what looks like a MAGA supporter. So she has been repeating Kremlin's lies, of course, all the time, and she is famous, at least among Ukrainians, for posting these two things. One is, fuck Ukraine,
When I was watching the Republican debates and they're sitting here trying to make me cry for people in Ukraine. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Have you looked around America yet? Do you really think that this is what the people at home are going to respond to, perpetually telling them that they have to care about another nation more than their own backyards, that they should be caring more about what's happening in Ukraine, and Chris Christie trying to pitch it, and Pence trying to pitch it, and Nikki Haley, we need to be the police officers of the world when we can't even police her. We can do both. No, we obviously can't. Like, have you walked down the streets of Los Angeles? Have you walked down New York? We clearly, obviously can't do both, right? And so having, I think, that the courage to stand on something that doesn't feel establishment popular or mainstream media popular, but that you understand is what people are actually feeling. And, I'm very much a person that from the very beginning has said, F Ukraine. I stand on that.
How elegant. Less is more. And then the next one is Russian Lives Matter.
Absolutely appalling the way Russians are being treated in America and abroad. That our leaders and government institutions are allowing for, and at times, calling for this discrimination following their global Black Lives Matter hysteria is quite telling. Russian Lives Matter.
So she likes to repeat the exact words of Putin. Ukraine wasn't a thing until 1989. Ukraine was created by the Russians. They speak Russian. Owens said on her talk show on Tuesday. I guess backing her tweet that said, fuck Ukraine. No, Ukraine was not created in 1989. Ukraine is actually the rightful ancestor of Kiev Rus, but that's too much history, and I don't want to sound like Putin and go back generations. But as I always say, let's say Ukraine was created in 1989. So what? Everyone signed the borders. Everyone agreed on the borders. The fact that Ukraine was able to develop such rich and amazing culture, apparently in 30-something years, is quite wild. Honestly, like that's to me that sounds like a success. And even if it did exist for only 30 years, there is a whole generation of people, millions and millions of people that grew up in this independent country that know themselves as Ukrainian, their language as Ukrainian, their traditions as Ukrainian, and their culture as Ukrainian. So it does exist. And now what, you're going to eradicate it and exterminate it because you're not happy with it? Now that's not true. Ukraine doesn't only exist for 30 years. Ukraine is independent since 1991. But again, what are you going to do about it now? It was legally done. It was, everyone agreed upon it, including Russia. So now you just want to, come in and decide to go back on your words? It's kind of like, imagine you grew up, and I guess Candace Owens is really going to love this one because she hates trans people too. But imagine you grew up as a woman your whole life and your mom and dad were named Jackie and Smith. I don't know. And then these two random people, John and Rosalind, come in and they're like, we're your parents now. And you know what? You're a man. You have to act like a man and you have to be a man. And you're like, no, well, I'm a woman. And they're like, no, you're a man now. So that's what Russia is doing to Ukrainians. They're like, you know what? We don't care what you think. We don't care who you identify as. You're Russian. You have to speak Russian. You have to forget that Ukraine exists. We're going to eradicate all of your national symbolism. We're going to, flame off your tattoos that have any Ukrainian symbolism on it. You're a Nazi. We hate you, and you should hate yourself. I'm sorry. My entire life, I grew up as a Ukrainian, and all we did was just kind of invest into our own country and develop our own culture, and we didn't, encroach in any other countries, especially Russia. We didn't disturb or bother anyone. If you look at the history of conflicts Russia has started versus Ukraine, I think it speaks for itself. But anyways, Putin has repeatedly claimed that Ukraine was created by Russia when defending his decision to launch a full-scale invasion of the neighboring country late last month. Modern Ukraine was entirely and fully created by Russia, more specifically the Bolshevik Communist Russia, Putin said in a speech addressing the nation just days before the invasion began. This process began practically immediately after the 1917 revolution, and moreover, Lenin and his associates did it in the sloppiest way in relation to Russia by dividing, tearing from her pieces of her own historical territory, the president continued. While Ukraine and Russia have a shared history and their culture is deeply intertwined, Ukraine's capital of Kyiv was established hundreds of years before Moscow, and it was the government created by Lenin that would eventually end the independent Ukrainian state in the early 1900s. It was not until 1991 that the Ukrainian people successfully won back their independence after overwhelmingly voting to leave the Soviet Union. That is according to Newsweek. And because of these things, Candace Owens thinks that it's reasonable because, and I quote, he, Putin, has goals. The goal is not just to get rid of Ukrainians. That makes entirely no sense. It would not be helpful for him, she said. Yeah? So why is he bombing out entire cities and killing hundreds of thousands of civilians? Mariupol? Question mark. Why is he executing prisoners of war? Why is he burning Ukrainian books? Why is he burning Ukrainian churches? Why is he burning Ukrainian museums, stealing relics that prove that Ukraine is an old nation with rich and vast history? Why is he destroying Ukrainian schools? Why is he forbidding people from speaking Ukrainian? Why is he kidnapping children and indoctrinating them into Russia and into Russian beliefs? Why is he telling these children that their parents don't want them and they're Nazis? These are markers of genocide, Candace. Just FYI. I stand by every word of my tweet pertaining to the treatment of Russian citizens abroad, Owens tweeted on Monday. Those calling for Russian students, opera singers, etc. to be banned are the kind of scum who would have demanded the Japanese internment. So this is pertaining to her tweet, Russian Lives Matter. That was actually retweeted by the Russian embassy. And she doesn't seem to care about Ukrainian lives, which Russia is quite actually, bombing every day and has done so much damage to. But of course, Russian lives matter. I mean, hey, Candace, we agree. They matter so much that Putin sends portable crematoria or mobile crematoria to the battlefield so that they can just burn the bodies and get rid of the evidence instead of bringing them back to their families. Yeah, they matter. But to your context, Russian lives should matter to their president, which is why he should take them off the battlefield, bring them back home to Russia within the borders that were recognized by the world, outside of the borders that were recognized by the world in Ukraine. And he should just let them live and drink vodka and, I don't know, abuse their wives because it's not illegal in Russia, which you would probably love because you are quite misogynist yourself. However, that's the whole thing, Russian lives should matter. They should matter to the Russian president and they should matter to the Russian people. Enough that they should stop the slaughtering of Ukrainians and Russian people going to die at the front line to invade someone else's home. While Russia is just the largest country on earth that does not lack any territory at all? Something tells me I'm going to get a little more heated, though, because we're moving on to our infamous Marjorie Taylor Greene. The representative from Georgia. Posting on X, formerly Twitter, the Georgia representative who consistently has been critical of aid to Ukraine since the war began in February 2022 posted an article originally published by The Islander, a self-professed geopolitical analysis site, and reposted by the Strategic Culture Foundation. Remember that name. And she wrote,
Anyone who votes to fund Ukraine is funding the most corrupt money scheme of any foreign war in our country's history and forcing the American people to pay for it.
So this article claimed that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's closest associates bought 2 yachts worth of a combined total of $75 million in October and speculated 2024, and speculated that they may have used Western aid to do so. Even Marjorie's own commenters had a lot to say about that, to be honest. And I'm not surprised because it's just a load of bull. And we will get to why it's a load of bull. It's a load of bull because, first of all, Ukraine does not get money. Ukraine gets weapons and Ukraine gets projects for infrastructure and stuff like that. When you hear money, that doesn't mean we're getting cash. It's like American companies are contracted to help our electric infrastructure, help our economy and stuff. So 99% of the money actually stays in the U.S. and helps create jobs in the U.S. So it's actually beneficial for the U.S. to help Ukraine. And these jobs usually are created in red states where there are lots of factories and, manufacturing of weapons and such. So yeah, there's that. Also, again, Zelensky doesn't get cash, and he's also not an idiot to be buying yachts and mansions during a full-scale war when all eyes are on him. What? This is so dumb. I don't even know how these people believe that. But here are some tweets back to Marjorie on this subject. Rep. Greene is reposting content from a Strategic Culture Foundation, a Russian state propaganda outlet sanctioned for spreading disinformation and interfering in U.S. elections, alongside links to information about the foundation. We're going to talk about it in a second. She actually got community noted for that, which is so funny because Elon Musk kind of took off fact-checking and introduced community notes, hoping that, it would be less effective against fighting propaganda, but oh well, I guess it's the evil of his own making. One of the comments under this tweet was actually fascinating, and I absolutely loved it because it says this.
The majority of Americans don't want to pay your salary. Yet here we are.
Burn. Another one.
Why is anyone taking this woman seriously? Can't you see the whole Trump squad does nothing but this?
And another one.
Burn. You got fact-checked. Of course you would source it from a Russian foreign ministry that spreads misinformation.
So, according to Newsweek, the SCF is a Russian think tank and publication. In 2020, the Washington Post reported it had spread false information that Bill Gates was making a coronavirus vaccine with surveillance capabilities. In April 2021, the Department of the Treasury imposed sanctions on the SCF over alleged interference in the 2020 presidential elections. Sounds like such a credible source to be speaking from, Marjorie. In a statement, it said that the SCF created false and unsubstantiated narratives concerning U.S. officials involved in the 2020 U.S. presidential election. It added, it publishes conspiracy theorists, giving them a broader platform to spread disinformation while trying to obscure the Russian origins of the journal so that readers may be more likely to trust the sourcing. Not going so well for the SCF, right? In March 2022, the Treasury Department actually imposed 20 sanctions on 26 individuals and 7 entities, some of whom were employed by the SCF, for spreading disinformation ahead of the war in Ukraine. 7 individuals connected to the foundation also face sanctions from the United Kingdom. I mean, MGT has always criticized funding for the war in Ukraine and called it the Ukraine scam. Yeah, it's such a scam that Americans are benefiting from it. And it's only a scam when you describe it the way that you do, somehow trying to portray it as billions and billions of dollars in cash pouring on top of Zelensky's head. But in reality, whether, and I say this responsibly, whether you want it or not, America profits from war because at the end of the day, Lockheed Martin's and a lot of other companies' sales, which contribute a lot to the American budget, have skyrocketed since Russia invaded Ukraine because other countries in Europe are also terrified of that happening to them. So they're buying more and more weapons and ordering more and more weapons from America. And of course, as per usual, my favorite one of her Twitter stunts is, it's not our responsibility to give Zelensky and the Ukrainian people false hope about a war they cannot win. Yeah, that war that has lasted almost 3 years now. It's going to be 3 years and actually around a week, a little over that. And the war that was supposed to be a 3-day military operation where Russia, the second greatest country in the world, invaded Ukraine and took it completely over in 3 days because obviously Ukraine had a very small army and was not competitor to Russia at all. Yet somehow 3 years later, here we are. So I don't know, Marge, check your sources. And meanwhile, we're going to move on to this next tweet, which is actually from the Libertarian Party in Nevada. You know that party that Elon Musk loves so much because he calls himself a libertarian? While, libertarians technically are supposed to support decentralized government, and Musk is kind of in the middle of a hostile government takeover right now, but, nonetheless. They posted this lovely photo. Let Ukraine burn. The party's longtime member, Ron Paul, has been justifying Russia's actions for years. In 2014, he supported the Russian occupation of Crimea, and after Russia's full-scale invasion, he wrote that the Ukraine crisis also provides an excuse for Congress to do what Congress does best: increase federal spending. Right, because any sane human being with any sort of conscience would see Ukraine quite literally be on fire because Russia is carpet bombing it and go, let Ukraine burn. I mean, listen, you might not like Ukraine. You might not support Ukraine. You might, believe in Russian propaganda, but Jesus Christ, damn. So you're calling yourself the better party that's supposed to support human rights and decentralized government and be all about democracy and all that? Right. That sounds reasonable. Moving on to our favorite far-right conspiracy theorist who has also been on our team more times than I can count, who loves Russia, loves spreading disinformation about Russia, and just loves being such a terrible human being that most social media platforms in existence at one point banned him, but then obviously Daddy Elon reinstated him, and his name is Alex Jones.
Ukraine is now the satanic mini-me of Hollywood. Volodymyr Zelensky is an unelected dictator and a NATO puppet trying to trigger a nuclear war. God help us all.
I mean, 2024, in December 26th. I mean, I love this, right? Kind of like Zelensky is an unelected leader. I'm so tired of showing this statistic, but here is 75% of the population electing Zelensky in a landslide. And also, if you take notice over here in these like blue regions, that's where people voted more, right? So like in the east, more people voted for Zelensky than in the west, even though in most regions he won. Overwhelmingly, but that's just, to kind of get ahead of the conspiracy theories that it's the Western Nazi Banderovites that elected him. He's an elected leader. And, American far right, Alex Jones, Elon Musk, Trump love to quote the fact of the importance of the Constitution, of course, as long as it suits them and their crusades. But so Constitution, I agree, is very important. And in the Ukrainian Constitution, during martial law, which was invoked because of Russia's full-scale invasion and aggression against Ukraine, you actually cannot have a presidential election. It's unconstitutional. And again, my God, I'm so tired of repeating this. But there are so many factors for which we can't have an election. One of them being, how do soldiers vote from the trenches? Do they just leave their positions, say, sorry, bro, hold on. You take on the Russians and I'm going to go vote. I'll be back in a couple of days. That's just unreasonable. Polling stations with a lot of people gathering to vote are fantastic targets for Russian missiles. They love targeting public spaces and large gatherings of people. Then we also have the people that are under Russian occupation, which is 18% of Ukraine currently. The size of Denmark, so those people can't vote because obviously they're under Russian occupation. Then we also have people that have been displaced into Europe, and it's going to be, there are so many refugees, obviously, because a lot of people fled from war because their cities are completely ruined and no longer exist. So those people also might have a hard time voting because there are just simply not enough Ukrainian embassies around the world and consulates around the world to handle the sheer volume of people that would be voting. Yeah, there are lots of logistical issues with this, and also it's unconstitutional, since you all love the Constitution so much. This is kind of a bonus point that I'm going to do, and we're going to do the Politico fact-checking for J.D. Vance's, not necessarily tweets, but quotes about Ukraine. And Politico is actually a news source that has been targeted by Elon Musk and all of the far right, and all of the people that hate it really for spreading correct information. It's been targeted by Elon Musk as an organization that the USAID has been funneling money into for them to write lies. I think it was 8 billion or 8 million that he said Politico received from USAID. Well, Politico as a news publication, as an independent news publication, actually did receive some money from USAID, like a lot of other publications around the world, to function, but it was in the thousands, in the lower thousands. And if you've ever worked in media, you know that barely covers anything, but alas.
I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another.
I mean, that's probably the most truthful thing that he has ever said, because yeah, he doesn't care what happens to Ukraine. However, he has alluded many times that Ukraine is corrupt, that it's a waste of money. He's against the aid for Ukraine. Ukraine is just this black hole that we should stop funneling money into. So let's do some fact checking. Ukraine is corrupt. The claim: we're getting easily $500 billion into the hole for the Ukrainian conflict. Why? So that one of Zelensky's ministers can buy a bigger yacht. He said in an interview with former Trump strategist Steve Bannon last year. I admire the brave Ukrainians, but let's not mistake the courage of Ukrainian troops on the ground with the fact that they have the most corrupt leadership and government in Europe, and maybe the most corrupt leadership anywhere in the world. This is what Vance said at his Heritage Foundation speech, not linked to Project 2025 at all. I digress. So the reality is that Ukraine is quite corrupt, despite efforts by the government to clean up the country, but it's been, actually. So the reality is Ukraine is not perfect, obviously, and there is corruption. But in Transparency International's annual Corruption Perception Index, Ukraine ranks 104th out of 180 countries with a score of 36 out of 100 points, where 0 means highly corrupt. In 2014, the year Russia annexed Crimea and started the war in eastern Ukraine, Ukraine had a significantly worse score of 26. That's actually Russia's score this year. It ranks 144th out of 180 countries, much worse than Ukraine. The United States has a score of 69 and ranks 24 out of 144 countries. Better than both Russia and Ukraine, but behind much of Western Europe. So when you talk about corruption, you might want to look in your own backyard, because for some reason people love to put Ukraine as this like pedestal of corruption, people who don't like Ukraine, but like it's actually been improving, while the corruption perception in the United States has been getting worse, and in Russia as well. So like, food for thought. Ukraine doesn't account for donated weapons. The reality is that in 2022, Ukraine established a parliamentary commission to control donated Western weapons. Ukraine files reports on how we use American weapons every quarter, which brigades have U.S. weapons and how many, and of course, what was lost in battle. The U.S. also keeps an eye on weapons. The report that Vance cited actually said that Americans, not Ukrainians, failed to adequately track roughly 1 billion of Javelin and Stinger missiles, night vision devices, and other monitoring devices that never made it to Ukraine. So 1 billion was lost somewhere, and no one knows what happened to it. That report was painful to us, and that number was caught and used by many Ukraine aid opposers, she said, adding that the report by Pentagon appointed one of the Ukrainian political figures actually said that this report was really painful for us because, a lot of anti-Ukraine people were using it. But in reality, it wasn't Ukraine that lost 1 billion. It's actually the U.S. that did and doesn't know where it went. So it didn't come to Ukraine. Then my favorite point that J.D. Vance loves to keep on making is military aid to Ukraine is harming the U.S. economy. He complained about a new U.S. defense spending bill, saying, while it does invest some in critical manufacturing of American weapons, it sends those weapons overseas faster than it even replenishes them. This is not a bill to rebuild the defense industrial base. This is a bill to further extend this country. The reality is that most U.S. contributions go to military aid, including weapons and equipment made by American defense contractors who employ communities across the country. When the United States spends money to purchase military equipment as part of an international aid package, the material may go overseas, but the money and jobs stay in America. Yeah, JD, I mean, you and a lot of far-right talking heads and anti-Ukraine talking heads who for some reason just hate Ukraine for no reason. Well, it's not necessarily for no reason. Half of your party is really tied very close to Putin, unfortunately. But you like to make these bold claims that actually contradict themselves. I mean, that's kind of a strategy and I get it, but it's so painful because it's like half-truths don't make a truth, no matter how many times you add them up. But if you're not constructively thinking about them, if you're not questioning it, if you're not researching your information, if you're just taking what you're seeing at face value, it's very easy to believe these types of things, unfortunately. And I could cite so many more tweets from her and from other people like Joe Rogan, Lauren Boebert, and both media personalities, and, Lex Friedman, who did an interview with Zelensky where Zelensky brilliantly explained why Ukraine is not to blame and Putin is actually behind all of this, and so is Russia. And he then quickly realized how much damage to his personal opinion this did, and he then came out and said that Zelensky was an asshole for, saying bad things about Putin. All of these people take any problem that exists and they weaponize Ukraine to talk about this problem. So homelessness in America, well, that's because aid to Ukraine. I don't know, border, well, aid to Ukraine. Americans, groceries are expensive, aid to Ukraine. Gas is expensive, aid to Ukraine. It's just really easy to blame something in order to get out of your own shortcomings and your own wrongdoings. And that's what I want to leave you with today, and I hope you enjoyed this little tweet dissection. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and send it to a friend. Also, of course, subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications so you can see me next time and not miss it. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the good Russians soon enough and a lot more other interesting topics. And of course, please do comment your thoughts and opinions and anything you might want to say, because I actually appreciate when you do that. I read it, and sometimes I even create videos responding to the comments. So thanks, and see you next time.